Welcome to the weekly briefing. Today is, I'm going to look at my calendar, Thursday, June 16th. And the purpose of the weekly briefing is a 30-minute quick conversation about a current topic, a hot button issue, some bit of news, a trend in the industry. And man, today this is like right in the sweet spot because we're talking about AI-driven content. I guess that's the phrase for it. And our guest today, in addition to my co-conspirator, Mr. Tim Thompson, is none other than PJ Richardson from Laundry. And we're also waiting on Amanda Russell from Cream. We were going to have Ryan Summers from SPILLT joining us, but he has kid duties tonight. So he sent me a few things that I'll be sharing. But Tim, why don't you say hello and then introduce PJ in a more official capacity.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, welcome everyone. Thanks for your patience as we kind of get our security features figured out here to launch this thing off. It is such an interesting time in our economy and some of the changes that are happening. We've seen such technological revolutions taking place really honestly in the last couple of years. And some features of the work that we're doing, working with computers and computer advancements, and in today's conversation, even content being created by computer stuff. So PJ, welcome to the show and being part of this conversation. Let's kick things off with just give us the 12-second overview of what's going on with Laundry and how this is relevant to you.
Oh man, so many different ways. I mean, we're, business as usual on the, what I'll call traditional projects in sort of 2D live action workflows, but, and going well and creative and sort of all that. But the AI art stuff has just been kind of not, I mean, it's been brewing for quite a while, but really took I think for everybody involved, it's no mystery, it really kind of hit a peak in the past few weeks, maybe. If you're on LinkedIn, you've seen some MidJourney art, I'm sure at this point, and probably an abundance of it. But yeah, there's I think there's probably nothing that no one's seen that's like, holy shit, that's visually awesome. But I think kind of the back sort of hidden level of this is like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it somewhere in between? Is it scary? Is it amazing? What is it? And so I've seen lots of comments and dialogues in and around this particular topic, from like, well, you're not doing anything, the AI is making the art, or is this going to take my job, or any number of different things. So that's been interesting, let's just say. Yeah, let's start there.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll say this, PJ, that the question sort of got fired off in the community by Amanda when she was basically posing the question like, hey, it's that classic question like, hey, are we all out of work, right? In a few years, AI is just going to be doing what we do on a daily basis for our jobs nowadays. And obviously that's not truly the fear, but I think there's something behind that. And the way I think of it is it's this process of ephemeralization. Do you know this famous quote, PJ, or the term from Buckminster Fuller?
No.
Okay, so I'll dig this up. I think it goes something like this. Let me see if I can find it in my notes. Okay, so the process of ephemeralization, as coined by Buckminster Fuller, is the ability to do more and more with less and less until eventually you can do everything with nothing.
Either make or go as complex as and sort of weird and trippy as they normally would, with the help of this, AI to just come up with some wild ass shit. And then there's other practical things that I've seen. Like there was like about a year ago, there was an NVIDIA tool called Canvas, maybe, that used AI to, you basically paint in like you're in Mac Paint, and then it generated near photographic, background map paintings that you could put into 3D and that sort of a thing. So I think that those, I don't think you're going to take anything over. And by themselves, I think anybody that's seen it is, you can't really sell a MidJourney render to a client for shit because it just isn't there. But it's just a jumping off point. Like, and it's, and they take it or the other one I think is kind of interesting is the what's it called? Disco diffusion stuff, where you take video and combine it with AI prompts. to see what kind of cool stuff comes out of there. So it's just a matter of like what we do with it, really, and it's going to get better and better.
Yeah, I just read an article in the New York Times, I want to say over the weekend, where they were talking about just the advancement of a computer being able to generate an image or someone's face and be able to recreate existing content. Almost this idea of like it can think for itself or generate something for itself. And such an interesting advance. The term I think of, Joel, not ephemerization you have, is like the term Luddite. And that's goes back in history to this group of people, early 1800s, that are afraid of the cotton mills and the timber mills that were going to replace their job. And they protested against it. And I know that in my own career, as Joel pointed out, there's been so many advancements. Every few years, there seems to be a new piece of technology that honestly, and we've seen it replace some jobs. Color correction seems to be in the hands of animators nowadays. Even animators and editors have blended together. But what's interesting is we've all seen is an advancement almost in the creative art, where the tools allow a creative person or creative team actually accomplish more. And there's probably a sense of a reality of like, we're going to embrace it in a really fantastic way and create something new because of it. And I kind of look forward to that process.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's like, and I've seen, and I think that's where I think you'll see it in like the Nikes and Adidases of the world first, that combine it in some sort of fashion forward way with something else. I think, and we'll be like, and while we have been scared of it and been like, holy shit, that's crazy. And so, I don't know, stuff like that. And then I think I've seen some other innovations too, where recently I saw like a AI roto thing that took like a real video, like any of us on this call, and was able to roto it out and turn it into green screen. So it's I don't know. There's just so much. I think it's just a tool. I think it's, and the other thing that came up that I've seen a lot recently, a couple of times now, people commenting on, is like, hey, the AI is making all the art. What are you doing just besides typing words in? But I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's like, think of it like a film director is how I made the analogy, but with art. Like you still have to have an eye, you still have to have taste, you still have to be able to communicate, you still have to even maybe be able to tell a story. And so I think that's where it's really cool.
I was just noticing that our friend Josh Norton is raising his hand. Josh, you mind if I bring you in? He's got his hand up. Let's see. Are you in a position where you can chat, be on camera, etc.? All good. Okay. What's your point of view on this? Or you got a question? What's on your?
Oh, to unmute him.
We can't hear you.
You have to unmute him.
Oh,
Yeah.
hi.
Hey,
Hey, thanks, Joel. PJ, what's up? Tim, what's up?
Josh.
Love you guys. Good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I've been alarmed since Justin, one of our new guys over at Big Star, started to ping things back and forth with me about Disco Diffusion and then MidJourney. And I have this like kind of strange feeling about it, to be honest, that I think a lot of people do that are image makers. Tim, you're not included in that.
Thank you, Josh.
But people that make images for their lives, through their whole lives with their hands, whether it's digital or analog world. And this does seem to me to touch a nerve where coders and writers can create imagery like never before. And it is, does sound similar to other revolutions, but to me, it's like it's going into outer space rather than making it over to North America. This is like the future step in the beginning of something that really can become a templated world of title sequences and graphic effects and visual storytelling that really cuts out the image maker in a really significant way. As somebody who's run a business for 20 years and thinks about the longevity of our industry and employing people that do exactly that, I have to say it's kind of scary. It's also incredibly cool.
Mm-hmm.
but I do see it that way. I do see it as writers and coders being able to create images and cutting out those who crafted those images for a living, perhaps in a significant way.
I think something I'm wondering, and thank you for sharing that, Josh, and thanks for the tip of the hat to my former life as an artist. What I've noticed is that there's like this concept of there's always room at the top, right? Which I know is not necessarily comfort to those that are having to go against gravity so much to stay at that cutting edge in their field. But I will say, I just think back to in the 90s, there were definite huge shifts in the 2000s, in the teens. Maybe this one is different, because I will agree with you that the thing about AI is you get speed and scale that is really unlike anything we've seen before. But there's, maybe I'm just an optimist at heart. I feel like when it comes time to generate something that is motion, telling a story, has all the nuance that goes with what a great writer and a great artist bring to the table, I just can't imagine that we're anywhere near a thing called make me my commercial, right? I entered these 10 or 20, 30 terms and it like makes my thing. If somebody's going to prove me wrong, of course, I'll eat my hat that I have right here that I just bought on my trip. But that's my sense. I don't know. PJ, do you have a take on that?
Oh, wow.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Joel. I think it's got a ways before, if it ever gets to that point completely, before it does that. I think the other sort of, I think almost obvious, but sort of hidden part of it too, is that it's like anything you're already seeing on LinkedIn, especially. I think the volume of it is going to make it less unique. Like everybody's putting in everything and it all kind of looks the same at this point. Like it looks cool as hell, don't get me wrong. But like all the MidJourney stuff on LinkedIn, I'm like, it's too easy now. Like, how do you make something special differently? And I think I have no idea what that's going to be, but I think that's where it sort of speaks to that sort of at the top of the pyramid kind of thing creatively. It's just hard to know. It's going to be different. And I don't know how.
See, I guess that's what I think the challenge is, because I think I would almost push that it would be easier to make a piece of advertisement. AI could generate some image that creates banner ads or social media content or something that is just, basically uber consumed at a very fast pace. To me, PG, I think you're actually saying the right thing. It's really the unique piece of content, something that's genuine, transformational, something that takes a real human to have contact and connection with a brand. And I'd be curious if AI could, maybe even short form, right? We're talking 100 years from now, we're obviously going to have a different challenge, but we're talking about the next 10 years. We're talking about the creative challenge of connecting with people in a unique way. So Josh, I'm curious if what you're seeing technology wise is something that you recognize, wow, that would take more man hours or a higher education of time, that I don't know if I have a crew of people that can do that and this computer can do it fast enough. Or if you're recognizing that, or the possibility that work does connect in a different way and would be challenging to keep up with it or compete with it, I guess would be the real question. Oh, really?
There we are.
What?
Ask him to unmute again.
Yeah, hey, I don't really have an answer. Obviously, it feels like a tip of the iceberg that all of this other technology is going to start to be affected by this AI code, and it's going to proliferate into spaces where people make a living intensely. I think that's a foregone conclusion with AI, and you've seen it across other industries. But the creative industry has always been, the human's been irreplaceable because of life experience and cultural awareness, and the fact that we can relate. And I don't think that's necessarily changing, but I do worry about the craftspeople. And the things that I'm seeing that we're generating by putting 30 words in a prompt are just kind of blowing my mind. It's way powerful stuff. And so I'm excited to see what it's going to do. I'm certainly going to use it. And I was really wondering, PJ, how you were using it. If you're like actively using this technology in your work today, and if you'd be willing to talk about that a little bit, because we're going to use it somehow. I've got a few ideas already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
First, one thing I'll toss your way is we'll get those writers back, because I just saw a post about using AI to write taglines, and I was like, there it is. That's payback. No, but yeah, I mean, in all, so yeah, for sure. Like, I think, I've done the MidJourney thing. I'm looking at a disco diffusion to treat a animation within a title sequence for a particular scene, just to make it feel kind of different. I've done daily art where I used an old one called or a different one called Wombo, and then applied the art that it generated to 3D displacement maps to make more abstract, cool shit that had kind of interesting colors, and then supplemented it with 3D stuff. So trying to find a way to see where that goes too. And then also just using AI art as just blurry background paintings out of focus for 3D or 2D stuff in the foreground kind of goes a long way to just fill in some stuff. So on a day-to-day, that's already how I've kind of applied it. The one thing that I think that I would say so far is I don't think the limitation is going to be the AI. Obviously, it's going to get faster, better, and better and better. I'm already noticing, though, the big limitation are the inputs that people are putting in. Like, you can really see cognitive biases start to kick in, where it's just like, okay, you make cyberpunk art already, that's what you're putting in, and that's what you're only showing. Or, any number, you can go down that rabbit hole. You get what I mean with that. And it's like you have everything at your disposal. Like, you could put Kanye West lyrics in there if you wanted to, or a Robert Frost poem. Like, but that's the limitation that's I'm already seeing, that it's just like we're the limitation in some ways, which I think is kind of, I didn't expect.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in, PJ, something that Ryan asked that I share was this tweet from, for those of you that know John Lepore from the community, formerly Perception. And he said this interesting point. He just said, I'm encouraged by a singular phenomenon. Unquestionably, the best and most specific art I'm seeing from MidJourney is coming from some of the best creatives. And he goes down here to basically saying, these are the people who have been making it from scratch themselves for years and making the most interesting AI stuff I'm seeing. And I just thought that was, an encouraging point that I would raise, is I think there is definitely maybe we're all looking at this stuff now and saying, wow, that's amazing. But I bet if a month from now, we're going to be like, that stuff is actually starting to feel very derivative, because it's sort of what you put in is what you get out, to your point, PJ. Something else that Ryan shared was, he said the examples of CDs playing with MidJourney and somehow finding ways to wrangle images that look like what they would have made in the first place is what excites him. And he said also, one thing I've seen echoed by several people starting to play in the AI text prompt world is how it feels like you can be a much more active participant in your own inspiration rather than passively burning hours waiting through Instagram and Pinterest feeds. And I thought, that would be me. Like, if I was generating art these days, I would be like, okay, thank goodness I don't have to search for stuff and find reference that inspires me. I can actually enter some of those words and it generates inspiration. I don't necessarily use that art or show it to my client, but it gives me an idea. Maybe that's how the tool you guys might be using it.
Yeah, maybe. I think that, the one challenge that I run up against as it applies to client work is that AI generators tend to lean a lot more complex with their output, whereas particularly in a branding setting, they kind of go the opposite direction and go a lot simpler and a lot more specific. And so that's why I'm also not too worried about it yet, because it overloads with so much data and so much input, and it visually shows up that way. Whereas most of the time it's about less. And so,
That's interesting. I'm thinking back to, remember what was the original AirPods that had the silhouetted people dancing and the white right? That phone cord. Remember that one?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, they just made kind of a
correct me if I'm wrong.
pseudo
Yeah.
sequel.
Like, would an AI tool ever generate that as a result? Something that's iconic and super, super simple. I would be surprised if that was ever the output. But
well, this gets into, I was actually going to bring this up anyways, but this actually gets into, I think, a really interesting gray area with AI art. But it could, you know, like in MidJourney, I don't know how many people know this, but you can input a URL link to an image as a starting point for your prompt, and then add whatever else you want on top of it to see what happens. But so in theory, you could totally do that and see what happens. It definitely gets into a, like, it's either a dream for lawyers or a curse, because it's like, it gets into the whole like plagiarizing derivative thing too a little bit, and like what is or isn't a copy or duplicate. So that's where I think it'll, you know, but I mean, that's also everything NFTs are fighting right now too, and or not fighting, as it may be. But that's, so I don't know. But again, but that also, like, it also, I mean, nothing's original, obviously, but like that also, and we're already seeing with that MidJourney stuff, is it definitely gets into stylistic categories already. Like it's like if
yes,
you know,
finally he's
else,
back.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Tim, do you see any similarities in some of the challenges that the NFT world is facing to what is coming to with the AI stuff? Go ahead.
Was that a question for me? I'm sorry, you got interrupted.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just curious. You see some similarities in some of the challenges or legal battles that might come out of this?
Yeah, I was kind of actually asking the same question too, PJ. It's curious to say, like, you wonder what it constitutes inspiration and what it constitutes copying, right? So I just took a tour of Europe to walk around these museums. There are clearly some movements that take place and something of like replication in a knowledge or a texture or a style that kind of fits a time or a place or the technological advancement. And it's curious that, you know, you can do that more literal, like you can actually take the image in this place and copy it, but what it can be generated is interesting, isn't it? Like, how do we understand ownership if what you've done is just grab someone's image and ask the computer to do the work for you? Who really owns that piece, or who really is the creator at that moment? And I think that probably will be what advances and keeps this more creative tool for now, is that the creative mind has to do something that is unique, and that somebody else who replicated the same steps as you couldn't just copy exactly the same and get the same results as you. If I press the same buttons you press, when I get the same results, is that really a creative output?
Yeah, well, and I think it's because I kind of asked that question sort of rhetorically. I don't think the plagiarizing thing's really going to come up because it alters it so much that it is its own thing. I think there'll be social battles of like stealing prompts or just copying something that another AI artist made by putting it the same way. You can kind of see it on, anyways, on MidJourney and Discord. You can see people's prompts, and other people can actually, it's special, I think, to that one, but other people can kind of run with one of your prompt versions and version out their own, which is sort of like, oh shit, that's either completely open source and wonderful or not. But you know, it's just different.
Well, it's definitely gonna be different when the client asks you, can you share us the files? Right? Because now you're almost like, that is where all the magic is in that file. There is no more necessarily some unique representation of how you layered it or what filters you use or preferences you used, where that ability of creating something, hand it over to your client, and they could actually duplicate it like a Xerox machine would be very different.
Yeah, well, I think the thing, this is, I'm just thinking of it right now. I could be dead wrong on this, but I think, and not to get too deep into the weeds on this, but I think where it would be really interesting is, you know, when you're in MidJourney specifically, that's the one we're all seeing. You make something, generate something, you version it, you ask for variations, you version that, you know, kind of keep going and going with it. But you kind of go down the rabbit hole and it's not editable. But what would be really interesting is if it were like Houdini or something, where you where the steps are node based that you can play with and go back on, because then it's almost like layering in Photoshop, but the process, and then that's where you could give that back to the client to be like, all right, you want to make it go this way at this step or something? I don't know, but I think we're pretty far from that, and that may not catch.
But I will say, PJ, my theory is that's where this is headed. I think within a few years, the tool will be like, we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, remember when we would just enter a bunch of different words and MidJourney would crank up that thing. And then it became more of a tool that you could guide and nurture and do it non-destructively, like you're saying, right? Where there's like a process tree, and that could be really interesting. And maybe that's like the paid thing that somebody figures out how to take something like MidJourney as a core technology, but then develop it and put it into the hands of artists and charge for it because it's so incredibly valuable, just like so many of these other tools that started as open source, and then someone said, hey, let's turn that into something like Flame or Maya or so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So,
they'll find a way
I know,
to box it up into something pretty.
It feels like it's the chat roulette of AI art.
Yeah, it totally is.
You know, it's very undercooked, but it's super powerful, obviously. Like what the future potential of this is.
Josh, I think you nailed it on the head with what you just said right now. I don't know, in the sense that, like, I think it's a blessing and its curse is that chat roulette aspect of it being completely random with what you get. Like, unless that gets hyper specific, like it is just, I hate to say, but a kind of a novelty, even though it seems like it's not.
I do think that concept art is going to start to be generated by people who are pitching shows, concepts, generally speaking, using this platform. And that's going to be something we see a lot of. And when I look at the artwork that's generated, I see that it would take an awful lot of skill and time to make those images. So it seems in just weeks ago, a very hard thing for AI to do, to create those kind of images. It seemed like it was pretty far out of reach. So I think that's part of the shock factor that I'm feeling, and that other people are feeling, like, well, if that felt so out of reach, what's the next thing? And I think I honestly do think that this is the beginning of an era where AI starts to do much, much more in our space. And you know, again, I think writers and coders are going on a heyday with this stuff, whereas people who are used to spending elbow grease and you know, and had gathered all their brushes over the years, may take a backseat to this in some effect, because it's a different kind of personality mode for most. Those who, you know, spend the time creating visual art, you know, pixel by pixel, and those who kind of throw those concept words together. Sometimes it's the same people, but most often I would say it kind of isn't in our industry at least. So I do look forward to seeing the waves, but I do believe they're coming. It will be somewhat significant.
You know what's going to happen is it's going to be like in the 90s when like the CEO's cousin knows graphic design and sends the logo for the project. We're going to get like, can you make it look like this? And get this like shitty MidJourney render, and why can't you do it tomorrow? And you'd be like, oh, fucking hell.
Well, so no, stay unique and true to yourself as artists, because you know, that's the only saving grace.
Well, PJ,
I'm sorry, guys, I got to bounce, but good to see everybody. Really, later.
PJ, I was just thinking the same thing, but my 90s reference was when Joshua said we have to create it pixel by pixel. My 90s reference is we would say frame by frame, right? Because we were actually using film or some kind of animation technique that it wasn't, pixels weren't even available to work with. So we've actually seen this advancement or similar advancement in time, and there is some displacement. I think that's the reality of what happens in this moment is some specialties aren't necessary anymore, or they can't keep up, and they do fade away, and other specialties that we've never heard of are going to pop up. So that's maybe the excitement and some of the dread of what's happening is like, oh, this is a shift. It means things are going away and new things are coming.
Yeah, for sure. It's always yeah. And who knows what's going to happen, honestly. I think that's the big takeaway.
Well, PJ, if you're open to it, I would love to check in, you know, let's maybe come back into this in a month or two and see if the tool is actually useful, right, in your daily work or whatever, we'll get Josh back here. But it would be fun just to stay in touch on this and see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Tim, how about we wrap this up? We're 9 minutes past our 30-minute slot. We try and keep it to 30 minutes. We got a slow start today. So thanks for everyone bearing with us. By the way, sorry to our guests that we're not feeling well. So Ryan Summers and Amanda Russell from Crean, hope you are both feeling better soon. Ryan, hope your kids are doing fine. And PJ, you're awesome. Thanks to Josh for jumping in. For those of you out there that are not a member of our community, if you want to hang out and talk with awesome people like PJ and Josh and Amanda and Ryan and Tim and myself, jump into revCommunity, and you can DM me or Tim and get information about that. How else, where else should we point people, Tim? Go to community.revthink.com. What else? And then sign us off.
Yeah, I'll just say real quickly too, some of you were interested in Jumpstart and got the message that it's actually not going to happen this week, but 2 weeks from now. So if you are still interested or you haven't had a chance to meet up with Joel or have a conversation, please reach out to us now. The time and the space will fill up as it always does. In the meantime, just want you to know that we exist so you can thrive in your business and your life, and specifically with today's conversation, your career and how these pivots take place and what we can do to be part of it. So thanks for being part of our community. PJ, I'll say thank you to you as well. Hopefully I'll see you next week. You're going to New York, NFT NYC?
No, maybe, probably not, but I'll video in.
Florida man is going with me. So
yeah,
a piece of you is going with me next week.
Right, well, thanks everybody for logging in and listening to our rambles. Much appreciated.
Yeah. We'll talk to you next week.
You're an awesome human, PJ. All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay. See you next week. Bye.
Talk soon.